Okay, fine, no problem. So we'll continue with today's topics. Okay, there is one question. Okay, fine. All right. Fine. So in today's session, what we'll do is we'll just do a few more examples and get familiar with the using the Selenium API as such. The main target is to just get familiar with Selenium API, and so that we can later on sessions I can explain you guys what all the other framework utilities you need to remember, you need to take care. Okay, and if time permits, we'll also see how you can use Excel as such, how to read an Excel and how to put data into an Excel, uh, and how does maintaining an Excel would help you in Selenium testing as such. It's just an additional, topic which would come handy when you're doing a Selenium testing. Okay, and today we'll see, as I said, we will take up a couple of examples and make sure that we run through it. Okay, hello. You guys are able to hear me fine now? Okay. So what I am saying is, in today's session, we will try get familiar with the API of API as in the syntax, functions, etc. Present in the Selenium as such. So we will take a couple of examples. We will try figuring out some test cases from that examples, and we will try coding them in Selenium and see how it actually executes. Okay, and if time permits, I will also show you guys how to use Excel, how to read an Excel, how to write it to an Excel. How can you take inputs from an Excel and execute a test case and write back the output. So that actually serves as a the complete overall view of the test cases. So that you have the inputs for a test case and you have the outputs for a test case written into an Excel. Fine. So we'll see a couple of examples. So we'll start with our basic EMI calculator. We'll go ahead and see different elements today. We will see a sample login example. How do you log in? How do you test if the login is successfully executed? No, I still not shared the screen. I will share it. Okay, and we'll see till where we can cover the topics. Fine. Okay, so you guys are able to see my screen. Okay, and regarding the environment, you guys are what is the status? So by when will you guys be able to have the environment? For practice, any updates for that? Okay, fine. So Chrome will be still be helpful. Okay, no problem. So you guys have Eclipse in your local machines? Few of them are having Eclipse, few of them are not having Eclipse. No. Okay, that's fine. Okay, fine. No problem. So you'll have Eclipse and Firefox in the environmental machine, so you don't really need to worry. That's fine. Okay. So because one of the days we need to have a hands-on session where you guys will be practicing and uh, during the session, and I'll be clarifying doubts then and there. So for that we'll need the environment. I want you guys to be able to access the environment from your uh, place where you're taking the session. Okay, fine. So we have seen this code yesterday. So we ran this example of entering the values. Sorry, not this. Okay. So we have seen this sample example, right, of just opening the page, clicking over a tab, entering the values. We also seen how you can clear a input text box and enter the values in. Okay, fine. So today, what I will show you is how you can actually we by default what we have done is we have executed in a Firefox. Now, in order to execute uh, same code in a different browser, what is the changes you will have to do? Okay, so if you see, let me just open the right. Okay, now in order to execute the same code or the same set of test case or testing or the logic in a different browser, first thing what you need to do is identify what is the browser you want to test. In this case, we are selecting a Chrome browser. Okay. Now, in order to execute in a Chrome browser, you will need a Chrome driver.exe. As I said, the Selenium jars which we included comes with a default Firefox driver. Now, if you have to execute in a multiple browsers, you will have to get the respective drivers. So the driver is present over here, the Chrome driver in documents. Right, this is the exe. Okay, now I will send you guys the link from where you can actually get the Chrome driver as such. Okay, so this is an exe file which you guys will have to download from the net. Okay, I will send you guys the link from where you can download. So once you download it, you will have to place it at any place in the system, a local system, and then what you need to do is you need to write this particular line. Okay, so you need to set the properties. So this is a variable which is already present, which will have the path to which the driver is kept. Okay, so it's webdriver.chrome.driver, and the same way webdriver.ie.driver, etc. Okay, it goes on. So one, you have to specify this particular property value and the path in which the particular exe is kept. In this case, it is user Venkatesh document Chrome driver. Once this property is set, system.set properties, then you can use the same thing like the way we used over here, WebDriver driver Firefox. Same way, WebDriver driver equal to new Chrome driver. Instead of Firefox driver, you say Chrome driver. This is the only difference which we'll have to make. So again, yes, for every driver, for every browser, different kind of browser you do it, you will have to have that exe driver file for executing the test case. Yes, each browser will have a different driver. So that is what. So if you go back to this particular diagram, as I said, you should always remember this diagram. We have the automation code which will run over the Java Selenium jars, and each Selenium, I mean the Selenium jars interact with the Hello, can you guys hear me now? Okay, fine. Okay. So as I was saying, you guys should always remember this diagram. Okay. So this is the basic flow. So you have the code, Java code written. Okay, which will run over the Selenium jars, the three jars which I specified, and each jar will in turn interact with this browser specific drivers. So the Selenium by default comes with the Firefox driver. So you really don't need to set the properties and download a separate exe. But for other browsers as such, you will have to set the exe files and the system properties. Fine. Now those drivers will in turn interact with the respect to their own browsers. So Chrome driver will interact with the Chrome, Firefox will interact with Firefox, IE will interact with IE, etc. Okay, and you can easily get this Selenium drivers, browser specific drivers. You just have to Google it. You will easily find it. Now for Chrome and IE, I will send you guys the link. Okay, fine. So this is the only change. So once you, so the way the drivers are developed in such a way so that the API, as I said, the list of functions, the variables, the way you write the code, everything remains same. Okay. So all you need to do is you need to decide which is the browser you want to execute and set the code driver variable accordingly. That's all. Okay. Now if I run this particular code, it will run exactly the same as it ran in yeah, as it ran in the Firefox. See, it instantiates the Chrome browser. Okay, I'll run it once more. It loads a web browser, web page. It enters the values and it's done. Fine. You guys understood? It's the same set of code. Only change is I change the web driver, the starting part, and it executes in the that specific web page. Sorry, web browser. Clear? Any questions, or you want me to repeat? Okay, fine. So if you see in today's world, we have multiple browsers, right? So the test case which you write, uh, it might be for a specific page. That again depends upon the Chrome driver class comes with the jar. Yes, Chrome driver class comes with the jar. You don't really have to add any additional jars. For the code which you have written so far, you guys don't really need any other jar except those three jars. Okay. Only thing is you will need to have the driver exe and give the path of it. That's all. Fine. Yeah. So as I was saying, in today's world, when you develop a web page, web application as such, it is important that it is supported in multiple browsers because the end user we never know which kind of browser he is having, and it is up to the developers and the testers to make sure that the web application which you guys develop is compatible with all the browsers, most of the browsers at least. Right. Now, when it comes to testing as such, you cannot go ahead and write a browser specific code for all the times. So you have one applications and say three browsers. You cannot have three versions of the code for test cases to test it. Okay, that's a huge waste of time. That is where the Selenium comes handy. So So you have the web drivers, specific web drivers for each browser. All you have to do is when you instantiate the driver for testing. So the test case always starts with instantiating a web driver, right? So you just have to make sure that the test case which you are executing contains the specific web driver. So for Firefox, you have a this is the syntax. So you just have to say new Firefox driver, and you don't really need anything else. Everything comes in built with the Selenium jars, and you can start writing the rest of the code. Okay, your test cases basically, test logic, whatever it is. Now, when it comes to Chrome, IE, Opera, Safari, etc., there is one additional line which you'll need to do. That is, you'll have to download a exe executable file from internet, and you'll have to set the system properties for that specific browser, and this will also change. So if you see here, this is webdriver.chrome.driver. Now for IE it will be different. For Opera, for Safari, for it will be different. Okay, so one is that you need to know what is the system property variable, and the next will be the path in which you have kept the respective exe file. In this case, I have kept the exe file over here, and this is the path. Users Venkatesh documents Chrome driver. You don't really have to specify the extension. Okay, so this is the one additional line which you'll have to write, and then you will have to call the Chrome driver. Just the way we called the Firefox driver earlier, you'll have to call the Chrome driver. And once you have the same variable name, the rest remains the same. All the functions, all the API, the way it executes, everything remains the same. The same code will run in for a Chrome browser. That's it. Okay. Simple. Now I just comment these two lines. I run the same thing again. It will run in a Firefox. Fine. Simple and clear. Any questions? Okay, so this was one important topic, and yesterday, and the rest is basically it's you getting from the rest of the part is in Selenium as such, interacting with the Selenium as such. It is nothing but just knowing the syntax, which function to call what, and it's just about practicing. Once you've practiced and you get familiar, and we have already seen the uh, the talent of actually identifying an element. So from here till we go to the next topic, okay, our main aim and your aim is to just get familiar with all the functions present in Selenium, all the APIs provided by the Selenium, and just experiment in our web pages in different scenarios, and be handy with it. Okay, once it is done, probably today and tomorrow, so at any cost please get the uh, Chrome installed today, because tomorrow we're gonna have a hands-on session where we're gonna you guys going to code during the session, and we're gonna clarify the doubts then and there. So it's gonna be a hands-on session tomorrow. So I request all of you guys to make sure that you have the environment up and ready so that you can access it during the session. Okay, it's very important. We can go to the next topic, but can we have instantiate two browsers? Um, okay, so there is a question over here. So if we can we instantiate two different web drivers and run the same test case into. So if you see here, you have something called as an object. This is a driver object, correct? Right. Now, whatever test case code you write, it is always with respect to this driver object. Now, an object would belong to one entity as such. It can be belonging to Firefox or Chrome. Okay. Now, if you want your program to run both the browsers, okay, probably you will have to rewrite the code, or probably you will have to make it a function and call it separately, one after the other. It will work, but you will have to make sure that the driver is pointing the respective browser. Okay, because the whole idea was to make sure that you don't repeat this particular test piece of code, uh, ideally which ideally is your test case logic. Okay, you don't repeat it again and again for every browser. Now at the same time, if you want to execute both the drivers, you will have to make sure your logic is put accordingly, or your code is repeated for both of them separately. Because let's say I uncomment this. Okay, so if you see, it's the same variable repeated again and again. So I'll have to make this another variable. Now, whatever test case I want to execute, I'll have to use this particular uh, variable and then execute, and it will execute. But again, if you have a single test case or a set of test cases and you will have to run it with both the browsers, it is simple that you make the test case as a function, test logic as a different function. Okay, and you call this particular function twice. Or you rewrite the same code twice with different browser. Supporting browser variables. So if I run it now, first the Firefox will get executed, Chrome is getting executed parallel. Okay. Did I answer your question? Was this your question, or was it something else? Okay, so there are two questions. Why page is not loaded in Chrome? The page did get loaded because if you see the way the order of execution, okay. So first I initialized web browser, Firefox driver. So the Firefox comes up. At the same time, I have initialized the Chrome. So Chrome has come up. I didn't perform any action. Okay, I just opened the Chrome browser, and then I ran the same set of logic which we did earlier by calling this function and passing the Firefox driver. Okay, so first the Firefox test execution completed, then the function came back, and then it called again the Chrome. So that is why once the Firefox browser closed, the Chrome executed again second time. So and then the web page loaded and the test case continued. Okay, so that is the, so we'll just rerun it and then we'll verify this. Now there is another question over here. How do I achieve parallel execution? Okay, now the concept of parallelism as such in Java is achieved by threads. So you'll have to go through the Java concepts of threading, and you will have to initiate these two, like you'll have to call these two functions parallelly in a different threads. That way you will be able to see that both the browsers are executing the test case accordingly. Clear? So a Java being a line by line executor, synchronous line by line executor, it executes the code line by line. So as I call the function with a Firefox driver first, it completes the execution of the Firefox driver, and then it will execute the same test code with the Chrome browser. That is what is happening. So if I run it, you will see that Firefox is opening, Chrome is opening. Chrome, nothing happens in Chrome, but in Firefox, the page get loads because I have called the function with Firefox driver. So this will get executed, this will get closed, and then the Chrome gets start executing. It loads the page, it enters the values, and it reads, and then it closes. Clear? Yes, no. Did I answer your question? And for parallelism, there is only one way in Java. So you'll have to implement threads, and you just have to call these two functions in each thread so that the two threads execute parallelly. Okay. You guys want me to repeat something again? I can execute it again. No problem. Okay, there is another question. To QS. No. No, you guys are familiar with threads. Are you guys familiar with threads? First question. You guys know what is a thread? Okay, so okay. So if you see here, Let me just take few minutes. I'll not go deep. Okay. Here, if you see, so this is our Java program, Java compiler and the executor. This is Java compiler or executor. Okay, basically JVM, Java Virtual Machine. This is the one which takes care of executing your Java code. Okay, and now when Java JVM executes your logic, the code which you write, it generally goes line by line. Okay, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5, and goes on. So line 5, line 4 is a function call, so it gets inside the function call, executes it, comes back, and then the next line. Okay, now generally this is the complete process. Okay, and the process then runs in a single thread. Okay, now if you want these two things, so this line 4 and line 5 to execute parallelly, we should implement something called threading, which will initiate this particular process, which will call these two particular functions at the same time parallelly. Okay, so that is where you will need to understand what is threading. So this whole execution is called a process. The execution of this whole program is called a process, and process generally runs in a single thread. It's a linear execution, one after the other. Now if you implement threads, the same, the point where you implement the thread and the logic which you write inside a thread will start executing parallelly. Sorry. So when you implement it, the line 23, the code which is present in line 23 and 24 will be called in two different threads, and it will execute parallel. Till then, executing these two items in a different parallelly is not possible. Okay, and I can explain you in a debug mode also. I can show you guys. So there is something called as a debug mode. Have you guys seen this? You guys know what's a debug mode is? Okay, cool. So for that to work, I will have to put a debug point. Should. Right. So I'll put a debug point over here. Okay. And I will run the same program in a debug mode. Okay. So if you see here, first step, right. First step is initializing the web driver. So moment the line, this particular line gets executed, you will have the browser up. So the browser is loaded. Okay. The next step, I'm setting the properties of Chrome exe, and the next step is initializing the Chrome driver. So you will be able to see the Chrome browser coming up. So Chrome has come up here. Okay. Now I am calling this particular function by passing the Firefox driver. Okay. So I'll get inside this function. Now if you see, right. So if you see, the moment I execute one after the other, the actions which will be done will be applied only in Firefox, because I have called this particular function with the Firefox driver. Now if I have to call the same function parallelly with the Chrome driver, then it has to be a new thread. Okay, so that is where you will have to implement the threading. Now we are not going to cover threading because we generally don't apply any threading concept in a Selenium as such, and that's a different whole topic. Let's not digress. Okay, so I execute. You'll be able to see that the respective statements are getting executed, and you'll be able to see the output in the left side. Oops. This is right. So we'll run this once more. That was my mistake. So step one, Firefox executes. So you have Firefox coming in. Step two, I set the Chrome path. Step three, the Chrome comes up. Okay. Now I get inside this function. I have passed only the Chrome browser. So the respective events will happen only in the Chrome. Whereas in the, sorry, Firefox. Whereas in the Chrome, it is still waiting because I have not executed anything using the Chrome driver. Okay. The Firefox get closed. The control comes back to the main function. Now it executes the Chrome. Okay. This is how it happens. Now if you want those two function calls to happen parallelly, that is where you will need threading. Okay. So this is the overall part. Just pass this out. Okay. Fine. So any more questions regarding the drivers? Any more questions regarding the drivers and usages? I will send you the download links on the variables which to be used for different drivers. IE and Chrome, I will send you guys. Okay, fine. So next step is we will actually try performing an action asset. So I'll take one more web page. Okay, so I have considered this web page. This is one of our web pages we developed, and what we'll do is, as I said, our only idea is to get familiar with more and more with the API. So we'll spend some time, so today and tomorrow session, just to be clear with that. Okay. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to perform a login action for this web page, and then the logic I write, I will make sure that the page has been logged in. Okay, fine. So I will make one more class. So I'll take the default Firefox. The next step is to add a navigate. So I will navigate to, I'll have to copy this URL. So with this, I would have loaded the page in the browser. Okay. So what will be the next steps? So if you see the HTML, I have the ID one, I have the ID two. Do I have ID two? Right. And third item is the button. So I have another ID. So it is pretty straightforward. Okay. I will just do driver dot find element by ID. Username. So with this I have identified the username. Now I'll have to enter the username. Okay. So the other two items are similar. So I'll just copy paste that. I have password. Okay. And then I'll have to click. So here I say click. Okay. So with this, I'll be able to log in. I forgot the driver.close option. So it's pretty simple, right? Looks pretty simple, straightforward, easy, I assume. Yes, no. You guys didn't get it. It's still not finished. Just let you know. But so far, you guys were able to follow it. So what I've done is pretty simple and straightforward. I have started a Firefox driver, open the URL, enter the values into two text boxes, clicked on the third text button, and close the browser. So will this conclude my test case as such? Assume this is a test case. This is a simple program, but assuming that this is a test case, will it satisfy the test scenario as such? Okay. Now the first quality for a test case developer is to identify how you to actually write the test case as such. Correct. So in this scenario, is my test case complete? Is my scenario tested completely? So if I have to write at the end, correct. That's the exact question. That is the question which I am asking. So for me to finish or to say that I have successfully logged in or not logged in, okay. So just entering and clicking, will it be enough, or what is that can you do to cross check and verify that my login has successfully happened? Okay. So if you see this particular web page, okay, so that was the exact version, that was the exact question I was actually coming to. So given the scenario, how exactly would you identify and write the logic to make sure that your login has successfully happened? Okay, the page title as on this or the header. You mean this one? Right. Okay. So we'll actually identify this. So how would you identify this title? Now, what would be your reference path or the pattern for checking that this exists? How do you reach this? So you said page title. This is a title I assume you are pointing to. So how do you reach here? It is correct. So what you said is correct. All I'm asking is, since we are going with the title, how do you reach this title? So we have seen this. So I just want you guys to tell me, how do you reach this title? What is my CSS selector? Is it my CSS selector, or will I go with XPath? Or how would you go? What would you go with? Okay. So you would go with XPath? So let's see. So you take the text. So once the login is done, so what do? I say driver dot find element by XPath dot get text. So we have the title name. Now assuming that I already know the title, it has to be this. Just to be sure, I'll just print the title. Okay, so is this what you mean? So this will assure you that the login has successfully happened. Should we go ahead and test it, or is there anything else you want to add to this? Anything you feel we are missing? Nothing. Okay, so we'll go ahead and execute this. Yeah, so I'm not really sure how the text will come. That is why I've given a CISO statement to see if it comes with the space or without the space. You can see if we can trim the spaces. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry about that. Right. So this will make sure even if it comes with the spaces, without the spaces, we'll be able trimming it and then we'll be checking it. Okay. So let's go ahead and test it. If it goes wrong, we'll change it and we'll execute again. So file opens, page is loading. Login failed. Why? Okay, so what is the reason? Okay, my bad, sorry. I'm sorry. So when you compare a string, it should always be dot equals. It's not a direct object equal to equal to. No, it'll be fine. Okay, so that was one mistake. So you shouldn't use object to string as such. So it has to be dot equals in this. So you'll have to use this function as such, dot equals, and give your text, and it will execute the thing. Fine. Any questions? All clear? Simple. Right. So the selection of XPath, that is where I was saying. So I have used this particular Firebug tool. So it actually straight away showed me the XPath. But writing an XPath is always a little difficult task. That is where I was asking your opinions of how do you go for is XPath or SCSS selector or etc. Right now the XPath, if you see, it always starts with a reference. So you have an ID called HTML body content. So dot slash slash a default one. Now I can replace with this star with HTML body, or I can just give a star where it doesn't really matter what lies. Star is like replace anything with it, doesn't really matter. After that, I say I have an ID HTML body content slash I have a class a div with a class name main homepage, or you can say just a div. Okay, div first div of one. Inside that there is another. There are set of divs. Inside that I will take the first div again. Inside that again a div, and inside that a span, board, and a b. Okay, so div, div, span, b. This is the ID. This has multiple divs, so you take the first one. Inside that there is another two divs, so you take the first one. Inside that there is only one div, so you just write div. Inside that there is a div and a span, so there is a differentiation, so I just say span. Inside that there is a b, so you select b. So div span b. Clear with the XPath? Any more questions? Okay, fine. So should we see another example, or should we go ahead and see how you can automate this login as such using an Excel? So you guys are familiar with these are the basic ways how you just identify it, you apply, you see the web page, you see the scenarios, and you write accordingly. So when you take a programming of with Selenium as such, this is what it follows. Okay. Now, if you guys want to see one more example, we can go ahead and see with some other web page with some other scenario. or I can explain to you guys how to use an Excel and take the input and write the inputs back. Okay, so we'll go for one more example. Fine. So I'll take another website. Okay, so first thing, see the website, and let's define a use case or a test case. Just loading. Okay. Let's see something with multiple input options, like a drop down checkbox, everything. So it will be a good example. Okay, so you have checkboxes, you have text boxes. Okay. Hmm. Fine. So we'll do two test cases. One is this, and one is probably we'll just modify it. This is perfect. So this has text box, checkbox, drop down, everything. Okay. So what we'll do is we will try write a test case to enter some values inside this, calculate, and probably read this output. Clear? What we're going to do is we're gonna have to start with www.calculator.net. So this is the first is defining the test scenario, step of test cases. So we'll have to load this page. So step number one. Step number two, we will have to click over this particular drop down. So we need to perform a click. Once it clicks, the drop down, the list should appear, and from this list you will have to select the interest calculator. Once you select the interest calculator, you should make sure the page is loaded. Once the page is loaded, you will have to enter the values into each one of this. Okay, you'll have to select a drop down. So I will show you how to select a drop down value. Okay, and then click on calculate. Once you click on calculate, you will have to read the output and display it. Clear? This is a test scenario. Okay, so let's go ahead and make one more, or let's make one more. Okay, so let me quickly copy paste this. Get the URL. Okay, and we need to go and find where to click, right? So you open the inspector element. Now step number one, we have done loading the web page. Step number two is to identify the click. So I'll have to identify this anchor tag. Okay, and here I'll have to make a click. Now how would I do that? So driver dot find element by, let's say, link text. Or we'll go by CSS selector, where I say anchor tag which contains href. So this is nothing but an escape character. So I'll have to use a double quotes inside a double quotes. So I use an escape character. Okay. So let's see if this particular click event executes or not. And then we'll go with the next step. If this doesn't work, we'll have to figure out another way of making sure we'll be able to click or not. Yep, it works. Okay. So I forgot to write close. Okay, so what have I done? Simple. I have seen this particular HTML. So I have anchor tag which has an attribute called href, and this is the value in the href. So I just came here, I did a CSS selector. It's an anchor tag. This is how I represent an attribute, key, and a value. This is the value inside that. So I select using that. I perform click and it works exactly the same I want. Step number 2 clear. One is loading the page, which is default one, or you should say step 0. And step 1 is clicking the anchor tag. Is it clear? Or we actually selected this anchor tag? Okay, fine. Now the next step is, once you click over this anchor tag, we need to click over interest calculator. So again, I think it's a pretty straightforward, simple one. So we take this, I'll just copy this particular part. So the only thing you need to make sure is to find a unique identifier. It could be using a tag, it could be using a hierarchy, it could be using ID, it could be using some attribute value, anything. So any one of them, you just take it, you are able to identify it, you will be able to perform the action. Okay. So this will actually select this particular element. So once you click over this element, the next step is to identify these elements. Okay. So let's go one after the other. Starting principal. So this has an ID. Okay. So what we'll do, so we traverse it using an ID. So just to be sure, I will test if there is any other tag with the same ID, with at least the same string value. So there is nothing. It's only one single tag. So I will go ahead and use that. Okay. Driver dot find element by ID dot first clear the text. Next, send keys. And in the keys, what shall we send? Let's send some 50. Okay, now I assume the rest will be the same. We have an ID, we have an ID. Now this is a checkbox. Now we'll have to see how we can actually alter these checkboxes. We have an ID. Now select has an ID, ID. Okay. So what we'll do is we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 elements. So I'll just copy paste this 6 times. Clear and the value. 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So I'll just go find the ID as such. Now there is a special case for text box. We cannot really say enter send keys in a text box, right? So a text box, how do you handle? You actually click on a text box. You should ideally identify the drop down values, and from the drop down values you'll have to select one. These are the set of operations we generally have it in a text box. Correct? So let's enter rate of interest 7.5 years, 5 years. Initial rate, inflation rate is 3.5. So this will finish entering the values into all our text boxes. Okay. Now, how do we handle a select box? Okay. So unlike the text boxes or text areas or anything, select box is little different, where you have a list and you should ideally select something from the list. Correct? So how do we do that? So in order to handle a text box as such, okay, this is additional. We'll just remove it. No, this is not additional. Inflation rate. Sorry, tax rate. We'll say 1 and 3.5. Okay. Now, in order to deal with your select box as such, so we have a new different class, okay, called select. Okay. So we'll have to use this select and say some variable of your own. And here what you'll have to do, you'll have to say, you'll have to identify that particular select box. So in this case, we have an ID for the select box. So let's just leverage that. I tap cast to select. So once I get the select, so that's not a syntax. Okay, so this is how you actually load a select box. So you write select and it has to be of this particular class only. Selenium support UI select. Okay, there might be multiple selects from different jars, so it's nothing but a class name. Okay, so you should make sure that you include the select class using the Selenium only. Okay, so this is the package path UI and select. Okay, and equal to just the way you actually initialize a class new select, and you pass an argument which is actually referring to that particular select box. It will be driver.findElement by id c compound. Now once you do this, okay, what you'll have to do is you can select any value inside this particular drop down using this particular variable. Okay, so let's see what is actually we have inside this drop down. So we have in a general select box there are two things. One is the display value for the user and second is the actual value. So this is the text and this is the value. That is how you actually uh, call it. Okay, so using this text box I can select a value from a drop down, either the position of the value in the list, say index 0, index 1, index 2, index 3, or the actual value attribute of that particular select item, or by the visible text. Okay, so we will execute the same thing with selecting different values and see how it actually works, each of the function works. Okay, so let me start by index. So by default let me select, this is 0, 1 and 2, right? So let me select 2, select by index 2. Okay, and then I will say click over the calculator. So here and now we need to find a reference. I can use by CSS selector input, and I'll use one of the, I'll use src as the one. Src equal to the value inside that particular, and I'll perform the click action. Fine. So are you guys were able to follow this particular code I have written? We'll execute and see this, but did you guys follow this? You guys lost? You guys following? Yes, no? Hello? You want me to execute? So what I'll do is I'll just execute this, and we'll have one more round of what, we'll go through this code once more and see what we have actually done. Okay. So let's execute this. So you enter the values, you select it by thing, and then you click, and the value gets loaded, and the browser gets closed. So let's go do a debug, and parallelly we'll see the code execution. Okay. I think that would be better. So step 1, launch the browser. Okay. Next line, you load the page. So I have just loaded the page. In the next line, I have just performed a click event over this financial calculator. Okay. That is what this step does. So here I am finding this particular anchor tag. It contains an anchor tag inside with this value financial-calculator.html. So all I did is I just made a click event over that. Okay. So I click over that. The particular thing expands. Okay. The next step what I have to do is to click over this interest calculator. Okay. Again, it was another anchor tag which has a href with this value. So I wrote a CSS selector with a tag name and the attribute and its value, attribute key and the value, and I performed a click event. Right. So once I click over this particular item, the right side page is getting loaded. Okay. So once this page is loaded, it becomes pretty simple. I have these text boxes. I'll have to enter the values inside those text boxes. So first we have made entry into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 text boxes. So text box 1, clear, value enter, clear, enter the value, clear, enter the value, clear, enter the value. Okay, so once that is done, I have actually written the code to change what is present inside this select box. So now how do you actually deal with a select box is by using this particular class select. Okay, now inside this select you'll have to provide this particular identification. So you identify this by ID. So this particular select box has an ID. So I say driver dot find element by ID C compound. That is the ID given to this dropdown. Okay. Once I find this, I'll just pass it to this particular class initialization so that they handle this particular object select box will have all the control handlers for this particular select box. Okay. So that is the next step. Once that is done, I say in this select box, select that particular value, change the value or select a value using the index. So whatever is there in the third position, so the position start with 0, 0, 1, 2, 3 and so on. So I want to select a particular item or particular list value which is present at index 2 or third position. So I say select box which is an object and dot select by index. So moment I execute this, the value here changes. So what is present in the third position is quarterly. So that gets selected. And then next I'll have to make a click over this particular calculator. So I again went. So I figured out it has a unique attribute and a value, SRC and the attribute value. So I use that particular attribute value as a reference and I performed a click event. So I say click. So moment I say click, the data gets loaded. Right now I'm not capturing any data. I have written only the code till reaching this page, entering the values and performing a click event. So and then once I say driver.close, my test case completes. You guys were able to follow it? Any questions? Clear? Not clear? You guys lost? You want me to repeat once more? Cool. That's great. So the only thing left in this example is to actually read these input values. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll write the code to capture these input values and we'll run the debug once more. Okay. So that way we'll have one more revision of how exactly the execution happens, and we'll also cover the capturing of the data. Now this is the current scenario. So I want to capture this input. Now can you guys tell me the CSS selector or the XPath? Now finding an XPath for this or get me a CSS. So can you guys type what will be the way to contact or way to reach or select this particular element? So I want you guys to type it down in the chat and each one of you give your opinion of how to reach this particular element. Okay, so if you see we have a class over here. Before that we don't have anything much, right? So we have one ID here, the parent, and this is a class followed by a table tbody, trow, td, and the b. So what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to type it out. How would you select or how would you read this particular output value? So can you guys just think through and type down the CSS selector for this one? Some guesses, something, guys. Nothing. Mm, so this is what div of 2 is a no. Can you could you please write down this thing, the CSS selector format or XPath format? This does not belong to any of the formats. That's fine. So let me just write it down. So Let's go with XPath. So once I have this particular div, I'll have to select div 1. I can take this one, content. So in this 1, 2, 3, 4 slash div 4, inside this div 4 I have only one table, so I can say slash table. Inside this table I have a tbody. Inside this tbody I have multiple rows, so I'll have to select t row of 1. Okay, inside this t row I have multiple tds, so I'll have to select td of 2. Inside this td I have a b, so I'll just have to say b dot get text. Okay, so this is how you actually form the XPath. Now similarly, instead of I have taken t of 1, same way I'll have to take t of 2, t of 3, t of 4. So I have 3 more items to be pasted. 2, 3, 4, and inside each one of them I will have to select the second TD. So TD of 2 is fine. Now the second one doesn't have a B, so I don't really have to select B. The next row also doesn't have a B, so this is also not required. The fourth row also doesn't have a B, this is also not required. Okay, so let's just debug this and go through the code once more. So my step number 1, launch the Firefox. Okay, so my step 2 is, so the next step I'll be loading the web page. So in this step I'm loading the web page. In this step I'm clicking over this particular anchor tag, and in the next web page, next line I'm actually clicking over interest calculator. Okay, so once I click over this, the right side gets loaded. Now the next set of items, what I have done is, lines I have done is, I have entered the values for all the text boxes. First I clear it and then I enter some value. That is what I have done. Clear, enter, clear, enter, clear, enter. Okay, after that I will have to change the drop down value for this particular thing. For that, first I will have to identify this element. So I have identified the element by ID, driver.find element by ID C compound, and then I will have to load that into the select class. so that all the functionalities or all the actions which I want to perform over this select box can be achieved using this particular class. So this particular class has list of functions which will help us to interact with this select box. Okay, so I have loaded it into a select box, and among the functions which I have used this select by index too. So I have, so among the text box which we have, I want to select the one with the third position 0 1 2. Okay, so that is what I have given, select by index 2. So it selects the quarterly. Next step is to click over this particular calculator. So I select it by the attribute src and I perform a click. So once I perform the click, the values get loaded. Okay. Now the next step is to just read these particular values 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So for that I have taken the X path. So let's see if that actually works or not. So it works. I got the value, second value, third value, fourth value. Okay, now there is a fifth value which I have not written, but we can always go ahead and write it. So this will execute one flow of the scenario. Okay, and this is what we thought of achieving. This is what we got. Okay, final step is close the driver. Done. Okay, fine, clear. Okay, fine. So I will send you the code and the video after this session. So this is it for today. I think we are running out of time. Uh, Tomorrow we'll continue with the next set of topics. So I'll show you the Excel, how we can automate with Excel and page object model. Probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow we'll have one more hands-on session. Okay, chalo. Thanks guys. So please do practice and uh, please do come out with doubts tomorrow. Okay, thanks.